Okay, this is a quick video for anyone that's new to 4C, and it's just going to show how to get started with a simple step file like this and how to bring it in and set zero, set your starting stock, that sort of thing, and to make your first really simple toolpath. Okay, so from here I'm just going to go to File and then New, make a brand new program, so now we have nothing loaded. Okay. And now to bring in the file, we're going to come over here to CAD Operations and go to CAD File and say Import Step. Okay? And then we're going to select our file. This is the one right here. It's a step file, which means it's a solid model, which is great. And it just so happens that the CAD system, like most CAD systems actually, it exported it with the y-axis being up instead of z. And since we're using a machine, standard terminology is z-axis is up and down. So we're going to check this and say that the geometry is y-axis up, and that'll just kind of rotate it around for us. Okay, so now if I do a top view, you can see that it's oriented kind of in the same way we're going to put it in the machine, or at least close to it. And we're actually going to go ahead and rotate this a different way. We're going to rotate it in around the z-axis 90 degrees because it's not really going to fit in a vise like that. Right? Like if you imagine your jaws are going to close in the y-axis, you really have to rotate the part 90 degrees in order to hold it. So we come over here to our 3D CAD operations, and we go to Transform, and it's going to ask us which solid to select. We click on this one, and the transform we're going to perform is a rotation. Okay, so all that did is it added this transform operation on the left side over here, and just put in some default values. So now we're going to change it. Instead of rotating around X, we're going to rotate around Z. And I just happen to know that negative 90 degrees is the direction that we want to turn. Okay? So now we have something like that. Okay, so that's really our CAD model there. Pretty much pretty close to ready to go. And now we're going to set a starting stock. If we just click on this right here, it shows kind of a default starting stock. One really simple way to make changes to this is just to open up the additional extents in each axis and just add on to this. So if I want the X to increase, I can just say on the plus side we have an extra inch, and you can see my starting stock has gone out in that direction. Or we can specify a starting stock rather than just an additional amount oversized from our part. And we do that by coming over here to our CAD operations and say create solid primitive. Okay, we don't want to use a surface, we actually want to have a solid body here. So we'll do a box, and I just happen to know that the size of this workpiece is going to be 5 1/4 in Y, and I'm actually not sure about X. We'll give it a big X dimension there. And so that's pretty close to the right size. We're just going to go up in Z a little bit. Actually, the Z size is 0.88, and we're going to under the and so now you can see that's not centered with our part. So we could move the solid over to center it over top of the stock workpiece, which is fine. That's one way to do it. Or in this case, we're just going to move the stock workpiece to line up to our part. Okay. So in the transforms, we're going to come over here and we get the same box that we got when we rotated our part around. We're just going to add an offset this time instead of a rotation. And then we're just going to go ahead and offset this a little bit so that we can line it up. I know the Y is going to be the 5.25 divided by 2. Oh, and it's going to be a negative number. Okay. And then the Z, we're just going to raise this up a little bit just to kind of get us in the ballpark. Maybe something like 0.4. A little more there. 0.5. Okay, and now this is pretty well centered because you can't see any of the model showing through the block there. And now when we want to make this our actual CAD model, or sorry, our starting stock, we can right click on the solid box and say set as starting stock. Okay, and then we can turn it off in our actual CAD operations so that you don't want to actually see the solid there. You just want to see that it has been applied to the starting workpiece. Okay, all right, so that looks good. Okay, so now we're kind of done with most of the CAD for right now. We're going to have to do some more work on this in a little bit here, but we're going to move over to our toolpath area. Okay, and we'll come over to our toolbox and go to 3D CAD and 2D operations and insert a profile instruction. And I happen to know I'm going to use this tool right here. Okay, so Actually, we don't have a chain yet. You know, many times you can just pick the chains directly off of the 3D model, but in this case we kind of have this tongue sticking out right here, and the entire profile, the entire profile of the part, but they're not on the same plane. So there's actually no one edge or slice through this whole part that we can just click on and tell it to mill around the entire perimeter. So we have to create that in 2D geometry. So the easiest way to do that is just to come over here to Sketch and say, or sorry, 3D CAD, and say make a new sketch. And then that gives us all of our sketch operations we can create. And we're going to say project solids into a silhouette into a sketch plane. So this basically just takes the entire 3D model and projects it down into 2D, into a flat planar list of curves. Okay, so we go ahead and click that, and now we're going to select the solid, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so now you can see kind of that blue line there, and we're going to come over here and change our translucency. We'll just make it 80% so we can barely see it. And then if we click on our sketch, you can see the blue line there is a nice clean plane around the perimeter with all the edges that we need just to kind of drive a toolpath around the outside of this. Okay, so now we can come back over here to our profile, the toolpath, and click on chains, and then just select any of these, or the blue line. You can see when I hover over it, the entire thing lights up. So I'll go ahead and click that. And I know I'm going to want to cut the outside, so we're going to change this from in to out. And this would actually self-detect if we could pick it up off the 3D model. But since we're selecting from a 2D sketch, it really can't detect. It doesn't know which one you want to do, because when you go to 2D, you're not using the model anymore. So anyway, so that's expected. We're going to do the outside. And then we just click on this X right here, means that it's not compiled, or that you changed a value since the last time you compiled it. So we'll just go ahead and click on this, and now we can see there's our toolpath. Okay, and we can just do a quick simulation on it and see that it's going to go around the perimeter, around the outside. So that all looks good. And one other thing that we have to be a little bit careful with here, especially since we've now gone to 2D instead of 3D, we have to worry about our clearances and depths and all that. So I'm going to make the clearance 1 inch, so it's way up above our part. Then I'll just make the depth negative ½ inch, so we just can get all the way through the material. Okay, so that's good. So real quick, I'm going to show, we'll call this Operation 1. Okay, so now if I want to make another toolpath, I can right click over here and say add a new toolpath. And sorry, this is more like a list of toolpaths, okay? You know, if we come back over here to our, what we just named the Operation 1, we can put as many different instructions in here as we want. We could have a pocket, or, you know, surface finishing, whatever we want. So typically I organize by different operations or different machine setups in these toolpath lists. So let's come over here to a blank toolpath list, and now we're going to insert another profile and use the same tool. And what I'm going to show here is how to work on the other side of the part, right? So our model is oriented, you know, like so, like this. But what happens when we want to flip it over and work on this side? So the way we do that is we kind of flip it over in graphics, so we have it oriented sort of how we're going to put it in the machine. And then in our working origin over here, we're going to click on this, and this allows us to select a plane that kind of defines how the part is going to be oriented in the machine and where we're going to pick up our 0 from. Okay, so let's just go ahead and assume that I'm going to pick up my origin, or my 0, in the upper left-hand corner of our starting stock. Okay, so that's this corner right over here. So we're going to have to turn on the vertex selection, and we just click on that corner right there. Okay, and now you can see it thinks Z is down, which is expected. The software is just kind of doing the best that it can, and we haven't given it any more information yet. And the Y is coming out towards us, which is kind of backwards. So there's a few ways that we can flip that around. The simplest is just to say flip Y, which will also naturally flip Z. Okay, so now for this toolpath, this profile toolpath, our world coordinate system, or our origin, is oriented exactly where we're going to pick up 0 on the part, and the correct face is up. So now we'll just go ahead and pick up this blue line again, the sketch, and again we're going to have to change it to outside compensation, and then recompile. And now you can see that our moves are from the bottom side of the part, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and just simulate that. And you can see it's doing what we expect. And then if I right click on profile, you can see that it shows us kind of where our origin is, and that's also the same corner where you would pick up your 0. Okay? Okay, so I hope that helps. Thanks.